All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Saheel to everybody. So this is Saheel Chandrani. He's the co-founder and CEO of PingCX. And PingCX is real interesting. I actually found out about them through one of our customers who had a demo of their product. And Ping has a functional testing tool that I think all the contractors that are in here will be real interested in seeing. So I'm going to give him this floor here and have him present. Thank you very much.
They hear me? Everybody? All right. Very cool. So I appreciate the attention and the time. So, thanks you guys. No, my name is Saheel, as Aaron said, coming from New Jersey. This is Friday, late morning. We're all excited to get back to our families. So the fact that you're all here, very much appreciated. My sincerest thanks again, as always, to Aaron and the team at Cochrane Supply. This has been a wonderful opportunity for us. So we are celebrating our first year out on the market, so we are very new. And that being said, this is absolutely a sales pitch. So as Aaron said, we're a commissioning platform for building automation systems, and our primary customer is the controls contractor. So what we plan to do is the team at Alex, the team at Architect, Alex is here somewhere? I don't know, he had great questions. So the team at Alex, or team at Architect, Alex sort of defined this process of making points and data really simple so that you can get to that commissioning phase. And we're here to finish the job for you. So we'll talk a little bit about system integrators, kind of the system integrators in the room, generally. Yeah. Consultants? A couple of consultants, great. Any commissioning providers in the room? Anybody hate commissioning providers in the room? There's a lot of friction between controls contractors and commissioning providers, and so we'll talk a little bit about why or how we're trying to solve that. Is the audio inconsistent, or is it just me? It is inconsistent? You can hear it? Okay. So, I think we've talked about this several times throughout the day today, right? Are we typically the last trade on a job? Last ones to show up, most pressure to get off a job, most pressure to deliver a job correctly, accurately, and to do that with commissioning agents sort of breathing down our throats. And so what we have built here is a solution that helps you fully automate the commissioning process for delivering building automation systems. How many of us would do more project work if we had more people? Probably all of us, right? We choose not to do more work because we'd rather do work properly than do more less properly. So, big problem that we're trying to address. And then lastly, controls contractors. So my whole career has been in controls on the sales side. So again, arguably the dumbest person in the room. But I will say that what I've learned from the independent controls contracting channel is we are so proud of the work that we do that when we do get called back from a building owner, whether it is a controls fault or not, 9.5 out of 10 times we'll go back, we'll fix the issue, we'll figure out a way to build that back later on. But nobody in this room will ever leave a customer with a system that's not working properly. And I genuinely admire that. So what we're trying to do is a purpose-built tool specifically for controls contractors for them to then go and deploy. Any of us use any sort of commissioning tools that some of the OEM partners provide in their tool sets? Anybody use like a VAV tool, VAV commissioning tool? Now imagine a VAV commissioning tool or any sort of automated commissioning tool that you can now apply to any point in that BMS. So that's sort of the context that we're thinking. And that allows us to go from traditional commissioning methods, traditional commissioning approaches to building automation systems, to fully autonomous commissioning for building automation systems. So the sales pitch, we are in our first year. The technology is about 4 or 5 years old. It was built in a controls contractor's office. That being said, we partnered together to launch it as a standalone entity, celebrated our first year. And in this first year, these are very modest successes over the past year compared to a lot of our peers. But to that end, I think we've learned a lot of great lessons. And at the end of this presentation, I have 3 case studies that I'd love to show you on how effective this tool can be. The other benefit I think that's important to highlight here is when we do project work, major retrofits, we walk into an existing building and we're trying to really understand what's in that building and how it's working. All of that effort that you have spent designing, building, understanding that BMS, it's very easy for us to then retain that information and redeploy that information to continuously commission that building over the life of that building, or your life, or the relationship that you have with that building owner. And so the process of doing that initial commissioning, periodic recommissioning, a more regular retro commissioning program, or an ongoing commissioning program, if we bundle that together under one platformatic approach, that's our sort of phrase that we're calling lifecycle commissioning. A couple of things to point out. I hope this makes you guys nervous, and if it does, let me know, and if it doesn't, I'd be curious to hear that also. But we act like an admin user on the BMS network. So imagine our platform getting credentials to your BMS. The tool is doing actual live functional testing on an active BMS, whether it's in construction or otherwise. Does that cause anybody anxiety? That's great. Well, that's good, because generally people are like, well, we don't know if we want somebody or a system automatically controlling valves and dampers and actuators, turning things on and off. And the fact that there is some tolerance or some acceptance of that in this room is pretty encouraging. We heard from a few speakers already today that bringing in data and data homogenization is a bit of a concern, and I'm really glad that there are great solutions out there. We have some capability in our own to be able to do some of that. More context in this data set is always appreciated. And so, fundamentals of an automated commissioning system, it lives on the network, it's able to ingest data and understand what it is, and then essentially respond to that by suggesting functional testing. And then the end result of commissioning is proper and thorough documentation for the stakeholders in the building. And I think that's another really key value add, is what is normally a very tedious process of going in and getting a screenshot and populating a Word doc somewhere to build out these reports is now entirely an automated process. Are we following along so far? Is this making sense? Have I said something that causes anybody some discomfort? Great. So how does the tool work? Pretty straightforward. It is a cloud-based tool with an on-prem option. I agreed very much with what some of the speakers before me said, where the cloud is the future. We're big fans of the Niagara Cloud Suite and the capabilities that that brings to the building owner. We are just seeing some great shifts in attitudes between enterprise clients and their openness to understand how these systems work, and then allowing good access, right? So I think we owe it to the enterprise client to demonstrate good cybersecurity hygiene. We achieved our SOC 2 compliance earlier this year, which we're very proud of. But these are the steps that all of us in the room can take to demonstrate that, yes, there are valid and acceptable ways to bring cloud connectivity to the enterprise, which historically has been problematic for our industry. So one question somebody asked, what was the biggest hurdle to deploy? For us, it's not data or data acquisition, data contextualization. For us, it's connectivity. And by taking advantage of the cloud suite from Tritium and other ways, connectivity is probably the biggest hurdle. But once we've achieved connectivity, we condense the commissioning process down to mere days. So functional testing, do we each have sort of our own way of doing functional testing when we do BMSs? Do we leave it up to our techs, or do we standardize? Standardize? Bit of a Guys following along? Good. So typically what we like to see is most control contractors want to achieve some sort of quality level or level set experience between the techs that are out in the field, right? We want to bring some consistent quality level to all of our installations. How can we do that? And so we supply a library of a little over 1,500 different functional tests based on different types of equipment. Clearly, you can then customize down to your individual companies and your processes. But once that's done, you can essentially then deploy across all of the projects that you do to bring some consistent quality across your work. Since we are an admin user on a BMS network and we are writing to physical points, it's very important for us to make sure that we're not overwriting things that shouldn't be, that we are clearing things that are overwritten that shouldn't have been. So making sure that we're writing and reading from the right backnet priority arrays and these types of details I think are really important to consider when you're evaluating an automated commissioning solution. And then reporting obviously is one of the biggest reasons of why we do this. And so the ability to go out, generate thorough reporting for your owner, for your commissioning provider, that includes screen captures from the front end, that then compares the successes or failures of those systems. Comprehensive reporting is a pretty important capability. One slide that I'd love to touch on a little bit, we are big believers in fault detection and diagnostic. We think that that's a very valid technology that must be deployed in buildings to maintain certain health of a building. But we argue that a solid commissioning program is table stakes. It's an important thing that we must do to make sure that we have a great baseline to start from and then keep that running. And so what's the difference between FDD and automated commissioning or autonomous commissioning? For us, it's real-time functional testing on live systems. We want to test and verify against the sequence or a sort of set of design documentation and not necessarily a baseline condition. Now, we are hopeful that baseline conditions are indicative of good operations, but not always the case. Autonomous commission is effective from day one. So the moment we achieve connectivity and we understand databases, we're able to then go and do functional testing on those systems from day one. That lets us deploy very quickly. And then we test, observe, and verify, as opposed to observe and then run a rules engine to decipher some sort of condition. We're looking at how a system responds in real time. Does this slide cause anybody any anxiety? Great. So let's talk a little bit about some case studies. Anybody from the state of Utah or out west? Nobody in Utah? This is a school district that's just south of Salt Lake City in a sort of county, I believe it's called Provo. Very large school system, 41 buildings, 3 high schools, 14,000 students. A lot of what they've struggled with is, like most public institutions, we bid, we buy low, and what that means is over the years they've ended up with installations for multiple vendors, multiple installing contractors, and so for an owner, chaos is probably the best word to use, right? They have inherited systems that are functional. Are they as functional as they can be, or are they operating as best as they could be? Probably not. But to go in and make sense of that environment tends to be very difficult. And so if a contractor is asked to do recommissioning in that environment, it tends to be pretty challenging. So they had 4 sort of primary goals. One of them being, we want to make sure that when we accept controls projects, we are not going to change how we procure, but we want to at least understand that when we accept complete projects from a controls contractor, that it meets some baseline success criteria. Can we use a tool to help us, understand how a system is performing? 2, they wanted to start to implement Niagara across all of their buildings, and can we start to create a homogenized data structure that allows us to then more readily apply a standardized platform across the buildings? And then more importantly, we have young kids, and so the idea of after a long summer, if school's not open, that's very problematic. So the idea of completing school projects at the end of the summer was priority number 1. So in this example, again, like we said, our customer is the controls contractor. They're deploying the tool, they're running all of their functional testing, and then they're delivering this sort of success full project to the owner. So in this case, obviously I'm taking some liberties here. We're assuming that the prerequisite conditions, and that's establishing connectivity, understanding, a database, or getting at least a copy of the front-end database is available. But assuming that these prerequisites are done, to bring a project into an automated commissioning tool is very instantaneous. For us to build that data model of what the points are and what they're doing is relatively straightforward. It takes about a couple of days to make sure that we're writing the right functional tests to apply to these systems. But assuming that that takes us a couple of days, to run these tests again is very rapid. So think about 100% functional testing for a school in under a week. So in this example, we did about 1,988 automated functional tests across 140 VAVs, 4 air handlers, some rooftops, a chiller plant, some boilers. The total runtime of this tool is about 5 hours and 40 minutes. So 5 hours, 40 minutes of computer running, doing commissioning. This controls contractor had budgeted a little over 80 hours for this scope. So think about the week it took them to set up. The additional week essentially was labor that they could redeploy elsewhere. Just a couple of screenshots here of what the test scenarios look like, and there's some timestamps. I'm not necessarily going to go through it, but you can see that generally once we achieve a successful test result, it's met some success criteria, moves on to the next test. When we do get failures, there's a lot of rich detail here that can either go out as a punch list, as a work order, et cetera, to then assign work to different technicians. So in this example, about an 80% reduction in commissioning labor that the controls contractor had allocated, which for them was about 30% on total project labor. And kids got to go to school on time. Anybody from the East Coast? New York, New York City? That's right. So this is 90 Park Ave, one of the Vornado buildings. Came to us with a kind of unique problem that, look, we have a controls contractor we really like. We have, again, many different iterations of Metasys and FX, but we have a new chief who thinks nothing works. Can you help us convince the chief that yes, the system is in fact running, or if there are gaps, what are those gaps and how can we find them? So in this example, just about 1 million square feet, 19,000 points across multiple generations of FX with a supervisor on top. Again, some liberty here, right? Working with their IT department took a little bit of effort. I'm sure it always does. But assuming that we did the right prerequisite work, getting the system set up and the building connected to the platform was a matter of a day. Now in this instance, our relationship was with the building owner, but we reported to the controls contractor. Now the controls contractor is not proficient in our tool, we are, so we wrote these tests, so it took us about 2 days to write them, but then the tool took a little over 2 days to run. So in about a week, we completed about a month and a half's worth, we say 15 days, but we did about a month and a half's worth of recommissioning in 2 days, 4 hours and 5 minutes. So in these 2 days, the tool ran through 600 terminal units. These are VAVs, perimeter induction units, 8 large built-up air handlers, a chill water plant, and a hot water plant. Found a lot of issues. We found VAVs that were stuck in purge mode that just wouldn't reset. We found issues with dampers and freeze stats. And while we did provide very thorough reporting to both the controls contractor and the chief to validate his concerns, for the sustainability team who paid for this, it was very exciting for them too, that we uncovered about, and this is considered, Leon, you'll attest, this is considered a high performance build, right? That they thought they were doing all the right things, and we were still able to uncover about $250,000 of wasted energy in that year. Questions? Okay, and then I'll show you one last example here, and this is a college campus in northern New Jersey. Similar concerns, large campus, procurement sort of leads the acquisition of technology across the campus. A lot of diverse manufacturer OEM equipment and a lot of installing contractors. So similar goals, we want to be able to do smart things in our building, but we just don't know where to start. We don't really know what we have and how it's working. This was a 5-building pilot to get it set up was pretty quickly. Writing the tests was a little bit complicated just because of the sheer diversity of equipment. But that being said, it took us about a day per building. This one was interesting. We had an IT department that was very accepting of technology, and so it was a very good collaborative effort with the IT team, with the campus facilities team, and the energy contractor that we were working for. So in this example, again, a lot of equipment, a lot of diverse equipment, 11-hour runtime for the tool, a little over 1,000 different tests, but we proved that about 84% of their systems were actually operating exactly as they were designed. And at the end of this process, again, found a variety of different corrective actions. But more than anything else, we were able to then unify a lot of these systems and then give them a points list that they could then take and redeploy and essentially implement a lot of the exciting technologies that they were envisioning for their campus. For these 5 buildings, about just under $500,000 of energy savings that were identified as a result of deficient systems in their building. All right, let's do some questions. Any concerns on how the tool works? Is generally connectivity a concern for folks out in the field?
Nobody's got anything, huh?
I know. Like Florida.
Well, I got something for you. So I want to know tell us about your licensing model, and then further than that too, if you're selling this through to a contractor, which is obviously your go-to-market strategy, do you see them use it as like with service agreements, or how do they utilize it?
Yeah. So for us, thank you for the leading question. Absolutely, the model is to go to market to controls contractors. We sell just user licenses per month for as much project work as you can do. 10,000 points, 50,000, it genuinely doesn't matter. The idea here is that this should be observed or incorporated into your workflow as a productivity tool. And so the thinking there is exactly that, just a flat monthly fee per user for as much work as you can do. Now, when a building remains on the platform and you're using some capacity in the cloud to continuously commission that building, some small sort of adder fee per building, or based on the size and intensity of that system. So that's the sort of annual recurring cost, but otherwise it's just a flat license for as much work as you can do.
Got it. Cool. Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Saheel? All right. Looks like that's a wrap. Yeah. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.